Cheshvan, Rosh Chodesh Farbrengen. We'll start with some singing, gives people a chance to come on. Yeah. So we're going to sing tonight we're going to sing a number of songs from Musaf of Rosh Chodesh. We have a number of different songs that were put to the words. And so the first one, the words are Ahavat Olam, Tavi Lahem, an everlasting love you have brought to them, given to them. Ubrit Avot Labanim Tiskor, and a covenant of the fathers to their children will be remembered. So this is in Musaf of Rosh Chodesh. And you probably don't know this nigun, but hopefully it will get us off to a good start. Ahavat olam tavi lahem uvrit avot lebanim tizkor. Ahavat olam tavi lahem uvrit avot lebanim tizkor ve'eshiv lev avot banim ve'lev banim alavotam ve'eshiv lev avot banim ve'lev banim alavotam Ahavat olam tavi lahem uvrit avot lebanim tizkor. Ahavat olam tavi lahem uvrit avot lebanim tizkor ve'eshiv lev avot banim ve'lev banim alavotam I'll tell you a quick story. Since this is a Farbrengen, got to bring in a couple of stories here. This is an amazing story, actually. We're talking. They have a little bit of prophecy, a little bit of Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration. And so this nigun that I just sang, when my grandson was born in Brooklyn, so this nigun came to me almost immediately, and I connected it to these words also immediately. And then we flew to New York for the Brit, and at the Brit, I sang this song. Amazing thing is that my children just named their son Olam. And what are the words of the song? Ahavat Olam tavi lahem, an everlasting love you have given to them. And so this niggin with the words came to me. I had no idea that they were going to name him Olam. And it turns out that the words that I picked for the song have the word Olam in it. I mean, Olam is a very unusual name to name anyone. So when we realized that, it was like, whoa, a little bit of Ruach HaKodesh here. Okay, we're going to learn about Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan tonight. The first part, we're going to go through the different symbolisms that are attached to this month. As most people know, that each month has a whole series of different associations, a tribe, a sense, a letter, and many other things also. One of the planets, one of the fire, earth, air, and water signs, a astrological symbol. And these are very important because each month has its own energy. But how do we connect to that energy? We connect to them through these different associations. That is the gateway through. So we're going to go through some of these somewhat quickly, because I want to get to a lot of teachings from Rabbi Ginzburg about this month of Cheshvan. But it would be good to know the different historical events and the symbolism of these associations. So when we go over what Rabbi Ginzburg has taught, we'll have a clearer picture. So first of all, something that is pointed out by everyone is the month of Cheshvan has no holidays. And because of this, over the years, it became traditional to call this month Mar Cheshvan, the bitterness of Cheshvan. Because after going through Tishrei, that was so full of incredible holidays, here we come to a month that has no holidays. We're going to get back to the deeper understanding of this bitterness, but historically, it's also connected to the flood. This week's Parsha is Parshat Noach, and we're going to learn about the flood. And even though there's two different opinions among the sages as to when the flood began, I believe the majority opinion is the 17th day of this month. And in the Tanakh, this month is called Chodesh Bul, which is in a sense short for Ma Bul, the flood. So that's another reason for calling the month bitter, because the flood destroyed the world. There was a lot of dinim, a lot of judgment. Also, on the positive side is, according to tradition, it's Rachel Imeinu's Yortzeit. The 11th day of Cheshvan is Rachel Imeinu's Yortzeit. And for those who know, in an ordinary year, this year is, as everyone knows, is not an ordinary year. Everything in the world is not quite ordinary. But on an ordinary year, thousands, even tens of thousands of people go to the kever of Rachel Imeinu on the 11th day of Cheshvan. So Rav Ginzburg points out that the 11th of Cheshvan is the 41st day of the year. And 41 is Gematria Em, mother. Rachel Imenu, Rachel our mother. Now all of our matriarchs, all the imahot were called our mothers, Rivka Imenu, Sarah Imenu. But there's something very special about Rachel, and I think this would be a good time. We're going to sing a song dedicated to Rachel. But Rav Ginzburg says that in a sense, Rachel Imenu's yurtzeit is the Jewish Mother's Day, because she's positioned in Beit Lechem, and all of these years, as attested by Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah the prophet, she's been crying for her children to come home. Like a good mother whose children are in exile, she is crying until everyone comes home. So Yirmiyahu says that the voice of Rachel is heard in Ramah, the place called Ramah, and Rachel is crying for her children, and Yirmiyahu consoles her and says, your tears are not for nothing, because v'shavu banim ligvulam, your children will return to their borders. So this is a very well-known song from Reb Shlomo Carlebach, and this would be a very appropriate time to sing it. If everyone's muted, but still you could sing along with me from wherever you are if you know this nigun. Kol berama, berama kol nishma, Rachel mebacha, Rachel mebacha, Rachel mebacha b'neha. Kol berama, berama kol nishma, Rachel mebacha, Rachel mebacha, mebacha al b'neha. V'shavu banim, v'shavu banim, v'shavu banim, v'shavu banim, v'shavu banim ligvulam. V'shavu banim, v'shavu banim, v'shavu banim, v'shavu banim, v'shavu banim ligvulam. Kol berama, berama, kol nishma, Rachel mebacha, Rachel mebacha, mebacha al b'neha. Kol berama, berama, kol nishma, Rachel mebacha, Rachel mebacha, mebacha al b'neha. V'shavu banim, v'shavu banim, v'shavu banim, v'shavu banim, v'shavu banim ligvulam. V'shavu banim, v'shavu banim, v'shavu banim, v'shavu banim, v'shavu banim ligvulam. So this song also has a story. I don't remember exactly how many years ago. I'm guessing it must be 8 or 10 years at this point. I'm sure you all remember when the 3 teenagers were kidnapped here in Israel. And I believe it took like 19 days until they found the bodies. But for those 19 days, there was some hope that they were still alive, that they were being held for ransom. No one really knew. People suspected the worst. But for those people who are here in Israel, there was such unity. As we all know, in times of crisis, Am Yisrael really comes together. There was so much unity, and everywhere, people were singing this song because they were praying, V'shavu banim ligvulam, that the children should come back to their borders. Of course, 19 days later, they found the bodies, and it turns out that they were buried really 20 minutes from my house in the city of Modi'in. None of them lived in Modi'in, but they all lived near Modi'in, and they decided they wanted them to be buried together. And so over the years, I visit their gravesite fairly often. And 200,000 people came to the funeral. It just happens that we were up north when it happened, but we watched it on computer. And for those who know Israel, the cemetery is right off of the highway called 443. And the entire highway became, the side of the highway for miles and miles and miles became a parking lot because it's a relatively small cemetery. There was really no place for people to park. The entire highway on the side became this parking lot, and people streamed into, I mean, most people couldn't get anywhere near the actual burial, but like 200,000 people came to show solidarity. Okay, back to Chodesh Cheshvan. So another tradition that we have is that, well, I'll start historically, that Shlomo HaMelech finished the first temple in the month of Cheshvan. He waited a full 11 months till he dedicated the temple. It was dedicated in Tishrei, but it was finished in Cheshvan. And they say because Cheshvan has no holidays of its own in the future, the third temple will be rebuilt in Cheshvan. So it will be turned into a month of great, great joy. So for those people who have been following, there's a number of, I won't call it negative, but not positive events in Cheshvan. The flood, no holidays. And then you have the death of Rachel Imenu, she died in childbirth. But then we have the promise of the third temple. And in a sense, we have the date of that Rachel Imenu passed away, so we can observe it and recognize it. So the letter for the month of Cheshvan is Nun. In Sefer Yetzirah, it says each of the 12 months is created through one of the 12 simple letters. So the letter this month is Nun. And Nun has very, very positive. Nun equals 50. The 50 gates of understanding. Shavuos is on the 50th day after the counting of the Omer. The Yovel, the year of freedom, the Jubilee year is in the 50th year. On the other hand, the Nun stands for Nefilah, for falling. That's why David HaMelech, when he composed Ashrei, so it's according to the Aleph Bet, it's an acrostic according to the Aleph Bet, but he left out the Nun because he didn't want to even allude to the idea of falling. David himself in the Gemara is called a nefel, as it were a miscarriage. This goes along with the Midrash that David had no time, his soul had no time apportioned in this world. And Adam Harishon donated 70 years of his life for David to have time in this world. But David's existential feeling was, in a sense, he was always in free fall. His neshama was always falling and picking himself up at the same time. Sheven yipol tzaddik v'kam. The tzaddik falls 7 times and gets up. So this month we'll call it a mixed bag. It has positive and negative. And I'll point out now, we're going to delve into this deeper, that even though many people call it Mar Cheshvan, in Hasidus, it's called Ram Cheshvan, which means the exalted Cheshvan. Now, if you look at the 2 words, if you just take the 2 letters of Mar and you turn them around, it spells Ram. So the whole idea is, in this month, as we'll explore more now, is this idea of being able to turn around an energy. Okay, it's also a water sign in astrology in general and in Jewish understanding of astrology. There are 4 elements, and the months go fire, earth, air, water, 3 cycles, beginning with Nisan. Nisan is a fire sign, ER is a earth sign, etc. And this month is a water sign, and it's obviously connected to the flood. It's an obvious connection. And the planet that rules over this month is Mars. And Mars is also a lot of judgment, a lot of dinim in this month of Cheshvan. And we'll also mention the tribe. According to the Arizal, the tribe that's associated with this month is Menashe. And if you take the letters of Menashe and you switch them around, you get the word neshama, soul. And this is very much connected to the sense of the month. The sense of all the months are very, very important. They really give us a key. The sense of this month is reach, is smell. And actually, the first time that this word appears in the Torah, this idea of reach, is in this parsha of Noach that always comes in at the beginning of Cheshvan. When Noach offered a offering after he came off of the ark and into a new world. So the Torah describes his offering as a reach nichoach Hashem, a sweet smelling offering to Hashem. Meaning when we give of ourselves to Hashem, it's, as it were, a sweet smell for Hashem. And we're told of all of the senses, the sense of smell is the most spiritual. It's the only one that we're told that was not involved directly in the sin of eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And because of that, to this day, the sense of smell is considered a very, very spiritual part of the neshama. And again, this month is Menashe, whose letters are neshama. Okay, so all of that is the associations. And I just urge everyone, every time a new month starts, it's very easy to just Google what the month is, and you'll get all of these associations. But those are the keys to really understand what kind of spiritual growth is available in each of the months. What kind of tikkunim can we do? What energy do we want to connect to? Okay, so now we're going to take what we've learned and take some teachings from Rav Ginzburg. So first of all, he brings a tradition. Not everyone does this, but in certain communities, on Shmini Atzeret, or Simchas Torah, that they call out, Yaakov halach ledarko. And Yaakov went on his way. He went, this is after the dream of the ladder that was firmly entrenched in the ground and reached the heavens. And after the whole dream, and God appears to him, and he says, this is the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. It says Yaakov went on his way. So what's the idea of saying this at the end of Shmini Atzeret? So there are 22 days between Rosh Hashanah and Simchas Torah here in Eretz Yisrael, because in Eretz Yisrael, Shmini Atzeret and Simchas Torah is the same day. In Chutz La'aretz are two days. But in Eretz Yisrael, from Rosh Hashanah through Shmini Atzeret / Simchas Torah is 22 days. So that, of course, relates to the 22 Hebrew letters. And the expression in English, we say, do something from A to Z. When you want to express, like, you have to deal with the whole thing from beginning to end, from A to Z. So from Rosh Hashanah through Simchas Torah is like one progressive energy. It's one talich, one process. And so as we're finishing Shmini Atzeret, even though technically the new year began on Rosh Hashanah, but we all know the expression, after the Chagim. I'll do this after the Chagim. I'll get to that after the Chagim. Everything is after the Chagim, because really it's just one flow. There's 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, even in Eretz Yisrael, and the Zohar calls it Yom De'arichta. The 2 days are like one long day, but really all 22 days are like one long day. So when we finish that process, it's like now the new year is beginning. Yaakov halach ledarko. So this is going to give us a great insight into the depths of the energy of Cheshvan. And so Rav Ginzburg says that we're told in the Zohar, there's 2 different processes that were, in a sense, involved with all of the time. One is called turning dark into light, and the other one is turning bitterness into sweet. And we're told that it's actually much harder to turn bitterness into sweet. Why? Just practical reality. If you have a dark room, pitch black, and you would light just one small candle, you dispel the darkness. It's no longer dark. It might not be the light of the sun, but it's light now. But if you have something bitter and you just put a little bit of honey or sugar in it, doesn't make it. You have to like put a lot of sugar, a lot of honey. That's why some people drink their coffee black, but it's bitter. Some people like that flavor, but other people put 2, 3 spoons of sugar in it, because if you just put a little bit of sugar, it would not do very much. So this goes along with this month being called Mar Cheshvan. Why? Because after all the glorious holidays of Tishrei, in a sense, this month seems bitter. There's no holidays. But Rav Ginzburg brings this idea that if we're not commanded about something, in a sense, it means that we don't need to be commanded. We don't need it. So in a sense, we don't need any holidays in Cheshvan. So why is that? So the reason is that, and this is the real test. This is the real test of Cheshvan, is that after all of the holidays of Tishrei, if we would just go back to our normal life and we would fall back, remember the letter of this month is Nun, if we would fall back to our old routines and our old attitudes as if all of Tishrei hadn't happened, so then the month actually would be quite bitter. It would be like, well, what happened here? Why no changes? What happened to all of those prayers? What happened to all those New Year's resolutions? So this month, in a certain way, is like is one of the biggest tests of the year, because Yaakov halach ledarko, we're going on our way now. Now is the time to put into practice everything we davened about, everything we hoped about, all of our promises to ourselves, to Hashem. Now is the time to do it. So now is the time to turn what could turn into bitterness if we didn't do it. But if we do it, then it becomes Ram Cheshvan. It becomes a very exalted month because we're doing what we said we're going to do. But that's fantastic. So this is connected to one of my favorite Torahs and stories of the Baal Shem Tov. Very, very simple, that on Shmini Atzeret, so when we switch from Morida Tal to Mashiv Ruach or Morida Geshem, we make the switch from he makes the dew to fall, and we start saying he makes the wind to blow and the rain to fall. So the Baal Shem Tov would do this. Here we go. Mashiv Ruach umorid hageshem. So everyone understood what he was doing was, in a sense, mimicking the words. Mashiv Ruach, he makes the wind to blow. Umorid hageshem, he makes the rain to descend. And the Baal Shem said, that's not my kavanah here. What's my kavanah? The word in Hebrew for spirituality is ruchnius, from the word ruach. So the Baal Shem would go like this: Mashiv haruach, enough ruchnius, enough davening, enough spirituality. It's time to morid hageshem, so to bring down the rain. But we know that in Hebrew, the word for materialism, for physical reality, is gashmiut, from the word geshem. So what he was saying is, it's enough of like making plans for what we're going to do. It's time to do it. And that's what this month is about. Tishrei is about getting into the headspace, into the attitude of what we want to accomplish this year. And then Cheshvan, that's the time to start doing it. And so therefore we can turn Mar into Ram. We can turn bitterness into exaltedness. So this is a very, 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 very deep idea. Now, when you deal with a paradigm, it depends the context of the paradigm. So for those people who are following, we just said that the month of Tishrei is turning darkness into light. And this month of Cheshvan is turning bitter into sweet. Now, Rav Ginzburg took those same ideas, but he applied them to the three pilgrimage holidays, the Shlosh Regalim, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. So he said like this. He said, Pesach is turning darkness into light. Why? We're going from slavery to freedom. And it actually happened in the killing of the firstborn is at midnight. The plague before it was the plague of darkness. And the eighth plague was of the locusts that filled the sky and blocked out the sun till everything was dark. So all three of the last plagues had to do with darkness. And then we come out of Egypt. We go from darkness to light. That's the experience of Seder night. Seder night, full moon, energy is like, no way to describe it in words. It's like an explosion of light. So Pesach is going from darkness to light. Then he says that Shavuos is going from bitter to sweet. How do we understand that? We can understand it in two ways. If you remember, on the way to Mount Sinai, there's the incident that it was actually right after we crossed the sea. If you remember, we went 3 days without any water. And when we found water, the waters were bitter. We couldn't drink them. And so the Torah tells us this very highly symbolic story. I mean, it happened, but the symbolism is tremendous, that he showed Moshe a tree, and Moshe threw the tree in the water and sweetened the bitter waters. Now, what is this connected to? That we just said we were going from from slavery to freedom. But we know in the world that if freedom doesn't have a direction, doesn't have a moral compass, then freedom very quickly turns into bitterness. So here we're now free. Now what? The next thing is we receive the Torah. In other words, the Torah is the mizgeret, is the framework in which freedom can work. For those who are old enough to remember, anyone remembers the song from Janis Joplin, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. She lived by that motto and she died by that motto. And in a sense, many people in the 60s and 70s were searching sincerely for freedom, but it got so wild and there was no moral compass. There was no direction. For many, many, many people, the attempt to find freedom turned out somewhat bitter. So Rav Ginzburg says that Shavuos is going from bitter to sweet. So these are the two that we just talked about. So what about Sukkot? Is there a third transition that happens? So Rav Ginzburg says there is. It's going from hatred to love. How so? Listen, Sukkot was hard to believe. It was only like 10 days ago we were in our Sukkot. It's just, it seems like already a long time ago, but it wasn't. everything about Sukkot has to do with unity. The putting the Arba meaning together, and we're told that they represent 4 parts of the body, so the whole body comes together. And the Arba meaning, the 4 species represent 4 different types of Jews, and we put them together. And when we read the Kavanah before shaking lulav, it talks about taking the 4 species which relate to the 4 letters of God's name, and we put it together in a unity. And of course, Simcha Beta Shoeva, the celebrations, and the statement in the Gemara that all of Israel is fitting to live in one sukkah. So the whole thing of sukkahs is about unity. And also we're told that there's 2 types of tshuva. There's tshuva from yira and tshuva from ava. There's doing repentance from fear or awe, and there's doing tshuva from love. So we're told that the beginning of Tishrei, from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, that's a type of tshuva that's happening from yira. Yira means awesomeness. That's why the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are called Yamim HaNoraim, the days of awe. But when Sukkot comes, it's still a time for tshuva, but it's tshuva from love. And on Sukkot, we bring 70 offerings for the 70 nations. And I don't have to tell you how many problems there's been between the Jewish people and the nations of the world for the last 4,000 years. But on Sukkot, at the time of the temple, we would bring 70 offerings as a sign of when Mashiach comes, how the whole world is going to get together. So just like we are fitting to live in one sukkah, that's why the Haftarah that we read on Sukkot is from Zechariah, and it talks about that one day the name of God will be one, and the oneness of God will be in the whole world, and ultimately all the nations of the world will come up to Jerusalem to celebrate Sukkot. So everything about Sukkot has to do with unity. And here, in a sense, it's turning the animosity between the world and Am Yisrael, and even the animosity between different segments of Jews. And so everything about Sukkot has to do with unity and love. So Rav Ginzburg says that Sukkot is just like Pesach is turning darkness into light, and Shavuos is turning bitter into sweet. Sukkot is turning hatred into love. Now that love, these are words from Rav Ginzburg, that the main energy of Cheshvan is actually love. Because as we said before, if we come out of the Chagim and we just go back to the way everything was, then what have we accomplished? Where's all the love going to go to? Where's all the unity going to go to? So that's why this month, the key concept is actually ahava, is love. Love of other Jews, everyone who's been following Rav Ginzburg's teachings, called the Fourth Revolution, the idea that this is the time to bring the Torah to the entire world. So this has to do with love. So this is a very, very important teaching. And this, again, is how we turn Mar Cheshvan into Ram Cheshvan. Okay, so we have some more teachings, but This is a Farbrengen. We need to sing a little bit more. So, like I said, we started, for those people who were here from the beginning, we sang one of the songs from Musaf of Rosh Chodesh. We'll be saying it again tomorrow. And this is another nigun. This is a very, very joyous nigun. And the words are, V'havienu l'tzion ircha barina. And he will bring us to Zion, your city, in joy, and Yerushalayim, the place of the temple, in everlasting joy. Those are the words. Again, it's in Musaf of Rosh Chodesh. We said it today. We'll say it tomorrow. And actually, it's in Musaf of all of the Chagim. I'll sing the nigun first, and then we'll put in the words. I nine 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 nine, I'm nine 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 nine, hey nine 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 nine, I'm nine 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 nine, hey nine 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 nine, ve'avienu levatzion yercha beverina, ve'avienu levatzion yercha beverina, Yerushalayim, bevei mikdashcha, oy besimchat olam. Yerushalayim, bevei mikdashcha, oy besimchat olam. Diridan bay nine nine nine, nine 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 nine, nine nine nine, hey nine nine nine, diridan nine 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 nine. Hey nine 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 nine, nine 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 nine. Hey nine nine nine, my nine. Hey nine 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 nine, my nine nine. Hey nine 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 nine, my nine nine nine. Hey nine 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 nine, my nine nine. Hey nine 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 nine, ve'avienu levatzion yercha beverina, ve'avienu levatzion yercha beverina, Yerushalayim bevei mikdashcha, oy besimchat olam. Yerushalayim bevei mikdashcha, oy besimchat olam. Nine 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 nine, nine 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 nine. Hey nine nine nine, nine nine nine. Hey nine nine nine, nine nine nine. Hi nine nine nine, nine nine nine. Oh, I'm nine nine nine. Hey nine nine nine, nine nine nine. Hey nine nine nine. I'm Yerushalayim, bevei mikdashcha, oy besimchat olam. L'chaim, everyone. L'chaim, 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 l'chaim. Okay, we have a few more minutes. Few more minutes. Okay.
You have 10 minutes, Rabbi.
10 minutes, yes. To the minute. Okay, so there's a Torah, a beautiful Torah from the Kuzimer Rebbe. And the first day of creation, it says, the end of the first day of creation, it says, Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Boker, Yom Echad. It was evening and it was day, one day. every other day is the second day, the third day, the fourth day. It doesn't say the first day. It says one day. Anyways, the Kuzumer says like this. He says, what's the difference? Erev obviously represents darkness. We're talking about turning darkness into light. And Boker represents light. And the Midrash says that darkness represents the deeds of the Rashayim, of the not so good people, and the light represents the deeds of the Tzaddikim. So the Kuzumer said, what's the difference between a tzaddik and a rasha? He said, Yom Echad, one day. Meaning, and I would imagine there's many, many Baal Tshuvas out here in the audience watching tonight. And I'm sure we know this from experience that sometimes that's all it takes is one day between a rasha and a tzaddik. But you know what? It can go the other way also. It says in Pirkei Avot, don't trust yourself until the day that you die. Because the Gemara brings a famous story of one of the great sages whose whole life was a tzaddik. The very end of his life, he became a Sadducee, a Tzaduki. So he said, until that last day, don't be so sure. So it can work the other way also, God forbid. But on the positive side, just one day. And this is the secret of tshuva. The secret of tshuva is someone could be going in a wrong direction for years and just turn it around. One day. That's the whole secret of tshuva. So let's take one other teaching that leads into this month of Cheshvan. We all know that all the months, there's a flow here. Each month is not independent. Each month connects to the previous month and flows into the next month. So what's coming before Cheshvan? So one of the most important teachings from the Baal Shem Tov, and the Rav Ginzburg quotes it endlessly in all of his books, all of his teachings. He emphasizes this one concept that the Baal Shem taught, that in every process, whether it's a spiritual process or material, practical process, it will always go through three stages called Hachna'ah, Havdalah, and Hamtaka. Hachna'ah means submission. Havdalah means separation. Hamtaka means sweetening. We've been talking about sweetening. So in a practical sense, what does this mean so we can understand it? Let's just take the example that someone sets a goal for themselves. So the first stage of accomplishing this goal of this task is submission. In other words, I need to submit my energy, my time to accomplish this goal. The goal could be something I could finish in a day or a week, or if it's a profession, it could be 7, 10, 12 years, or writing a book or whatever it is. So the first stage is always submission. I have to submit my time and energy and my attitude and my will to accomplishing X. Then comes Havdalah, separation. And that is the ongoing process of separating those things that will bring me closer to my goal and those things that will take me away from my goal. And this is sometimes an hourly decision. Sometimes it's longer, but it's a constant process of separating those things that will lead to positive results towards this goal and those things that will take me away from the goal. And then the final stage is called sweetening, hamtaka. And this is when we actually get to the goal. I'm sure everyone's had the experience that we set a task, we have a vision of accomplish something, a dream, and we work very hard to get it. And then we get there, it's not exactly what we had hoped. So that's not a sweetening experience. So what is a sweetening experience? Is that after all of that work, it's a sense of accomplishment. And then we can acknowledge and be grateful for God's help in allowing us and helping us to accomplish our goals. And that's a very sweet feeling. There's nothing wrong with feeling a sense of accomplishment. It becomes a bit wrong when we don't acknowledge God's help in the process. So taking that concept, let's go back to the month of Av. And Rabbi Ginzburg explains that we can understand Av, Elul, and Tishrei according to these three stages. Av is submission. Submission also means, in a sense, a shiflut. It's Tisha B'Av is as it were, the lowest point of the year. We actually sit on the floor by candlelight. It's quite literal that it's like the lowest point of the year. And in a sense, we have to submit ourselves to our collective history. And then we get to Elul. And even though many people squander the gift of Elul, most of the tshuva that we're supposed to be doing is actually supposed to be in Elul. Elul is the cheshbon nefesh. Obviously, if we don't do it in Elul, we could do it from Rosh Hashanah through Yom Kippur, of course. But really, we're supposed to be doing cheshbon nefesh and introspection and internal accounting during the month of Elul. So that's the process of separation. What's good and what's not so good, what's beneficial, what's not beneficial, what's positive, what's negative, about how I got to this place and what I'm going to be doing this coming year. And then Tishrei is the sweetening. Because all of the holidays, even though they're awesome, but just to be in God's presence and to be with community and to pour out our hearts and to pour out our souls is a very sweet experience. And that leads into Cheshvan. So we can understand again that Cheshvan is Ahava. That everything, the last 3 months have been leading us into Cheshvan. And this is really where the total test is. This is where the test is of everything that we've been working for months now. Are we doing it or are we not doing it? So I want to end with a blessing that we do it, and we take our New Year's resolutions, we take those high Ram prayers, we take all the beauty of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Hoshana Rabbah, Simchas Torah. We take all of it, and we don't fall back to our old ways of doing things, but we forge a new path forward. And this year should be a year of blessing and plenty and good health, very, very good health. And may the worldwide pandemic end quickly, and may we not just get back to normal, but may we forge ahead with new energy, new attitude, and it should be a Shana Tova for all of us. Thank you all. Thank you all.